Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The House of Representatives passed a resolution condemning President Trump's racist tweets about 4 progressive congresswomen of color, telling them to go back to the crime-infested places from which they came. 4 Republicans, as well as the recently independent Congressmember Justin Amash, joined with Democrats to approve the resolution. Trump's tweets were aimed at Congressmembers Ayanna Pressley, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, all of whom are U.S. citizens, one a political refugee. This is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
These comments from the White House are disgraceful and disgusting, and the comments are racist. How shameful to hear him continue to defend those offensive words, words that we have all heard him repeat not only about our members, but about countless others. Our caucus will continue to forcibly respond to those attacks on our members.
Congress members stopped short of censuring Trump, though, a measure pushed by Tennessee Congressmember Steve Cohen. The House debate temporarily came to a halt after Pelosi delivered her remarks, as Republicans said her description of Trump's words as disgraceful, disgusting, and racist were out of order. The House then had to vote in favor of keeping her remarks on the congressional record. Meanwhile, Texas Congressmember Al Green introduced articles of impeachment against President Trump Tuesday, forcing the House to take up the measure later this week. Green's resolution does not guarantee a House vote, as lawmakers could decide to table or even kill the resolution. The issue of impeachment has divided Democratic lawmakers, with a number of outspoken legislators repeatedly calling for the move. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, however, has resisted those calls, focusing instead on congressional investigations. In May, she said impeaching Trump was too divisive and not worth it. White House counselor Kellyanne Conway, meanwhile, defended Trump's racist tweets. When a reporter asked her about it, she responded by asking him his ethnicity.
If the president was not telling these 4 congresswomen to return to their supposed countries of origin, to which countries was he referring?
What's your ethnicity?
Why is that relevant to this conversation?
No, because I'm asking you a question. My ancestors are from Ireland and Italy.
Kellyanne, my own ethnicity is not relevant to the question I'm asking.
No, it is. Because you're asking about, he said, originally.
That question was posed by White House reporter Andrew Feinberg. He refused to answer Conway's question. A coalition of national rights groups filed a lawsuit Tuesday seeking to block a new Trump order that would bar asylum seekers who pass through another country before reaching the U.S. from applying for asylum. The ACLU, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Center for Constitutional Rights are among those seeking an immediate injunction. The rule was set to go into effect Tuesday, but didn't appear to, as it faces legal challenges. Legal Alert of the ACLU called the new rule, quote, the Trump administration's most extreme run at an asylum ban yet, and said it clearly violates domestic and international law. On Tuesday, the UN Refugee Office condemned the plan, saying it puts vulnerable people at increased risk. A separate suit by 2 immigrants' rights groups was filed later Tuesday, arguing the rule violates the Immigration and Nationality Act and disrupts their ability to carry out their work, forcing them to drastically divert or redesign their programs. The white New York police officer who killed unarmed African-American father Eric Garner in 2014 will not face federal charges. Officer Daniel Pantaleo kept Garner in an illegal chokehold even as he gasped, "I can't breathe," 11 times. This is Garner's mother, Gwen Carr, speaking at a news conference yesterday, directly addressing New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
You say you care about the New York citizens? Come forward. Show yourself as a mayor, the mayor that you was elected to be. Because the Garner family is not satisfied with what you have done. My son is dead. My granddaughter is dead. And then all you're saying is sorry. You have my condolence. Well, keep your condolences and do the right thing. De Blasio, you and your administration, step up. Yeah. Get those police officers off the force today.
A senior Justice Department official said Attorney General William Barr made the call on Eric Garner's case, overruling officials from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division who wanted to charge Pantaleo. We'll have more on this after headlines. In California, former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo was arrested Tuesday under an extradition order. He's facing corruption charges back in Peru, where he's accused of receiving $20 million from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht in exchange for helping them win public works projects. Toledo, who was president from 2001 to 2006, has denied the charges. Another former Peruvian president, Alan Garcia, died by suicide in April after shooting himself as police arrived at his home in Lima to arrest him on bribery and corruption charges, also related to the Odebrecht bribery scandal. Press freedom groups are calling for the release of independent Yemeni journalist Yahya al-Sawari, who was arrested earlier this month by Yemeni security forces. At the time of his arrest, al-Sawari was reporting for the Sana'a Center for Strategic Studies and was interviewing protesters who were injured by forces belonging to the Saudi-led coalition. He was reportedly then handed over to Saudi forces. The Committee to Protect Journalists says journalists are known to have been imprisoned, threatened, and detained by all parties to the war in Yemen. Planned Parenthood has removed its president, Lena Wen, after less than a year on the job. Her ouster came after disagreements between Dr. Wen and Planned Parenthood's board over the direction of the organization as the Trump administration and Republicans mount harsh challenges to reproductive rights, including state abortion bans. The board reportedly had disagreements over Wen's framing of abortion. In more reproductive rights news, two groups, including Planned Parenthood of Illinois, said Tuesday they will stop accepting federal funds to avoid having to comply with a Trump ban on federally funded clinics providing abortion referrals. The rule went into effect this week as it's being challenged in the courts. California Senator, 2020 candidate Senator Kamala Harris, introduced a plan, she says, will lower prescription drug costs and crack down on pharmaceutical companies for charging exorbitant prices. Under the proposal, the government would be able to set fair prices for drugs based on their costs in other markets, and more affordable drugs could be imported from other countries. Manufacturers would suffer penalties if they raise their prices excessively, and 100% of their profits would also be taxed if they prescribe a medication above a set price. Earlier in the week, 2020 presidential hopeful, former Vice President Joe Biden, announced his health care plan, which builds on Obamacare by adding a public option rather than supporting Medicare for all, like many of his more progressive primary opponents, including Senators Harris, Bernie Sanders, and Elizabeth Warren. Biden's plan would also allow Medicare to negotiate with drug companies to lower costs and expand Medicaid. His proposal says it would ensure an estimated 97% of Americans, to which the Sanders campaign responded that leaves nearly 10 million people uninsured. It would also leave tens of millions underinsured and saddled with high co-pays and deductibles, according to an analysis of the proposal by the Sanders campaign. In Louisiana, a suspect has been arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of historian and civil rights activist Sadie Roberts Josephs. Roberts Joseph's dead body was found in her car over the weekend. 38-year-old Ron Jermaine Bell was Roberts Joseph's tenant. He was reportedly late on his rent payments, though police say they're still determining a motive. Roberts Joseph was considered a local icon in Baton Rouge, where she founded the Odell S. Williams Now and Then African American Museum and hosted the annual celebration of Juneteenth, which she fought to have recognized as a state and national holiday. Baton Rouge Mayor Weston Broom called her a standout matriarch of Baton Rouge and added, quote, "We will make her legacy a priority here in Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish." A federal magistrate judge said the founder and editor of the neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer should be ordered to pay over $14 million to a Montana woman who was the target of an anti-Semitic troll storm. The Daily Stormer publisher Andrew Anglin mounted an online intimidation campaign in 2016 against Tanya Gersh, a Jewish real estate agent from the resort town of Whitefish, Montana. In the following months, Gersh and her family received hundreds of hate-filled messages, forcing them to temporarily leave their home. A Virginia state judge sentenced James Fields to life in prison plus 419 years for plowing his car into a crowd of anti-racist protesters in Charlottesville at a counter-protest of the white supremacist Unite the Right rally in 2017. He killed 32-year-old activist Heather Heyer in the attack. This comes on top of last month's sentence to life in prison on federal hate crimes charges for the 22-year-old self-described neo-Nazi. The judge in James Fields' case told him, quote, "You deserve the sentence the jury gave. What you did was an act of terror." Retired Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens has died at the age of 99. Stevens was appointed to the court in 1975 by President Gerald Ford. Although a moderate Republican, Stevens led the liberal wing of the court for decades and is considered a hugely influential justice who authored key decisions on cases around presidential powers, national security, and campaign financing, among other issues. In his dissent in 2000's Bush v. Gore, he wrote, "Although we may never know with complete certainty the identity of the winner of this year's presidential election, the identity of the loser is clear. It's the nation's confidence in the judge as impartial guardian of the rule of law," he said. At the height of President George W. Bush's war on terror, he wrote the decision granting Guantanamo prisoners legal rights and access to federal courts. In his dissent for Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, he wrote the decision, quote, "threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation." Stevens said at the end of his tenure on the court that his one regret was his 1976 vote upholding a Texas capital punishment statute that revived the death penalty around the country. Stevens later opposed most death penalty sentences. He retired from the court in 2010 as the second longest-standing justice. And 10 protesters were arrested inside ICE headquarters in Washington, D.C. Tuesday after staging a sit-in at the agency's building. Thousands more blocked entrances to the building and nearby roads for hours. The protests were organized by the Jewish-led group Never Again Action and the immigration justice group Movimiento Cosecha. The activists are demanding the government shut down all immigration jails, abolish ICE, and provide an immediate path to citizenship for undocumented people. Similar protests took place in other U.S. cities, including Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and Boston. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers across the country and around the world.